Fellow Mountaineers, old grads, young lads, and lasses, you made it to another edition of the Trust the Beard podcast. I'm your host, The Beard. It is 7:20 in the Mountain State, Monday, October 20th. Dark and gloomy out, rather fitting for the feeling around the program right now. That is the West Virginia Mountaineer football program. So today we're going to talk about basically what the hell happened on Saturday. It wasn't pretty. It was probably the worst showing I may have ever seen as a WVU fan. And I am not, that's not hyperbole. I have been a fan, I was born into being a fan, right? There was no question about that. But I really started getting into the games probably around the time I was 12, maybe 13, 14, really started following. So that's roughly about the Amos Zaraway era, when he breaks off a 60-some yard touchdown against Pitt. That around that era is kind of when I really started following and paying attention. And since that point up to now, this may be the worst game I've ever seen. And there's a lot of factors that go into that. One of them mainly is, we lost. Second is we didn't play well at all. And third is this is a game that on paper looked like we could actually win, if not, be competitive, right? It wasn't like we were playing number 2 Oklahoma or number 10 Texas, or, this wasn't a bowl game against a perennial national title contender. This was a 3-3 Central Florida team that was sitting at the bottom of the Big 12 alongside of us and had struggles generating some offense this year. They weren't really explosive, things like that. And we just let them do basically whatever they wanted. And so what was going to be Vegas had put as a 7-point or 7.5 point spread in favor of Central Florida, excuse me, end up being a 45-13? Was that the final score? I don't even know. I turned it off. And I'm somebody that's pretty optimistic. I usually don't turn off games, even if we're getting blown out, because I like to see how we handle ourselves. If we put backups in, what do they do? Things like that. And it was just so incredibly painful to watch that I just turned it off. I put on college football on PlayStation and played that instead, because at least the Mountaineers would win that way. I don't even know what to say. There's not really words for a performance that bad. That was, you really can't grade below an F-, but if you could, it probably earns it. We couldn't move the ball. We have no help up front. We're letting guys run free on defense. I mean, I heard on Three Guys, I believe this where it was from, that Central Florida had like 400 plus yards off of 15 plays, something like that. I mean, and I think the average, that'd be about like 28 yards, something like that per play. I mean, that's ridiculous. And I get it. I understand that this is year one and this is a rebuild and 80 new some transfers, yada, 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 got to get his guys. I get all that. And I understand it. And I'm still a supporter of the hiring of Rich Rodriguez. But man, when you are in the middle of potentially the worst season in Mountaineer football history, when you're in the middle of witnessing that week after week, boy, it's hard to find the good days or the positives, And the one bright spot is we did beat Pitt. How? I don't know. It's as if we turned on a switch and just became a different team for about a quarter and a half. I'm trying to find words. I don't have any stats with me or anything. I'm just trying to find words of just to give you guys some content. And I can't come up with any, because it was that bad. It was that bad. And if you missed the game, you didn't miss anything. I will tell you that. I'll say these few things that I have thoughts on. Now that my memory's getting jogged again, I had to get my morning coffee in. I've heard people complain about, all these positions are getting shifted in and out, like the quarterback and running backs and all that stuff. But we still continue to have the same five on the O line. Well, if anything has told you, or if anything about this season has shown you anything, it is how important your O line is. I believe quarterback is probably the single most important. Quarterback's your single most important position, but O line has to be the most important unit, right? No one position on there is probably as important as quarterback, but together they certainly are the most important unit because you could have Major Harris, Pat White, Geno, Will Greer, all molded into one quarterback. And if you don't have an O-line that can protect, then it's pointless. It doesn't matter how talented they are. They don't have the time to display that talent. And so this idea that like there's these gems on the roster behind these five and we're just holding them back for whatever reason, I don't believe that to be true. And I think Rodriguez even said it in his press conference after the game. These guys behind us were, there was a better option, we would go with it. And why wouldn't he? And so this idea that they're not going to, or he's being stubborn, I don't buy that. I think this is the best that we have, and they're just not good at all. And you think about if you throw other guys in there and they're worse, how many more injuries are we going to sustain? How much more beat up is our quarterback going to be? So I think that we just have to live with this is what we are. And I know at the beginning of the season, we all said, well, they're allowed to get better. They're allowed to get better, growing pains, yada, yada, yada. I don't think, yes, and that's true. Teams are allowed to get better. They progress through the season. Sometimes they regress. I don't think this team is going to get any better than what it is right now. You've had 7 games and a full bye week, and there was zero progress made. And I had predicted I made a video and I didn't get to put it out because something happened with the audio after I recorded. And for some reason, it would not play back. And I don't know what it was. I tried and tried, but I didn't feel like re-recording everything. But I had predicted that West Virginia would win 24-23. I thought maybe our offense would take a step forward after a bye week, right? Khalil Wilkins showed us some things against BYU, some flashes that, all right, the offense could progress under him at center, and it just didn't. We looked worse coming off a bye week than we did. Like it's like we just sat around on the bye week. Now I know that's not true. I know they didn't do that. I'm sure they got after it. And I said this weeks ago, and it's kind of obvious now, but I was like, we need dudes. That's all. I don't think it's a coaching thing, although you may be able to point to the O-line coach, Jack Bicknell. I don't know him. I don't know his history with offensive linemen. I know that Rodriguez worked with him at Ole Miss, and that's why he brought him on. I don't know if he's the reason they're not progressing. The O-line isn't progressing at all, or is it they're just not good? And is it simply, this is who we had to get? This is the time that we were allotted when Rich Rodriguez was hired. These are the guys that we could get. And we went senior heavy because we didn't have the time necessarily or the money to go after the big fish, or at least medium-sized fish. So instead of going after big-time players that we just couldn't get, we decided to go after experienced veteran upperclassmen in hopes that their experience and veteran leadership would kind of gel and we'd get some resemblance of a football team. That's my theory. I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, if you're going to have no experience at all, or no talent at all, I should say, or little talent, would you rather go with a guy that's a senior or a freshman? Well, probably a senior, right? Because he's seen more stuff. He's going to know a few more things. He may know a few tricks that allow him to perform better than what his talents allow him to perform. And so I think that's that's kind of just my theory of what they did. And it hasn't worked. It turns out you just need talent. And I know one thing is speed that Rodriguez has talked about. We certainly need speed. That was painfully obvious against Central Florida. So what does it all mean? What does this mean for the program? What does it mean moving forward? We can sit here and pick apart what happened against Central Florida, but it doesn't really matter because it was basically a slaughter. Now, one thing I will say before we move on to anything else. For the first half, I thought the defense, they didn't play great, but they showed up when they needed to. And, it was 14-7 at half. Could have been 14-10, but we, shanked a field goal after countless penalties from Central Florida kept the drive alive. So, you kind of luck out on that, and then your kicker misses somewhat of an easy kick. I wouldn't say it's, it was a chip shot or anything like that, but your average college kicker should be able to make that kick. And but it was only 14-7 at the half, so it's not like we were getting blown out at that time. However, it ended up that way, and we just did not have an answer for anything. And I had a thought, and I completely lost it. But moving on, like I said, we can talk about I now remember we were talking about the defense, right? Sorry, it's still early in the morning. I'm having my morning coffee right now as I do this. The defense, the thing about them, and I tweeted this out the other day, or I believe it was Saturday or Sunday. I'll put it up here on the video. Having such a poor offense plays a major role, I believe, in having a poor defense. And I've said this before, and the reason I say that is when your offense does not generate any yards, it can't generate any points. The other offense feels absolutely zero pressure to perform, right? If we got the ball at kickoff, went down and scored, that sets an entire tone for the game. Now their offense is automatically behind. They may feel pressure to force things, to do things that maybe are uncharacteristic because they have to try to score and keep up. But when you have a team that doesn't, like, West Virginia doesn't have an offense that can score, really can't even get past half field most of the time unless it's the other team's penalized. The opposing offense has zero pressure to perform. The coach, the offensive coordinator, they have no pressure, right? They can play loose. They can play free. They can probably do things that are kind of uncharacteristic to what they've done before. We've seen that for 3 games, and I'll touch on that in a second. But they know even if they do make a mistake, we're not going to penalize them for it because we don't have the offense that can penalize them for making a mistake like that. We even got an interception in the second half and didn't do anything with it. So, there's no urgency on the offense to have to do anything. So going back to what I was saying about the opposition doing things uncharacteristically, for 3 straight games now, I've heard on podcasts and breaking down the opponent's offense. We have said for 3 straight weeks. So Utah, BYU, and now Central Florida. Well, they don't really do this. They don't really do that. They're not really explosive. They don't push the ball down the field. They dink and dunk, or whatever the case was. They do this or they do that. And the exact thing that we said that they don't really do so far this season, they took it to another level against us. They did exactly what we said those teams don't do. So BYU, we said, they don't really take shots downfield. And I think we said the same thing with Utah. They don't really take shots downfield. And I know Central Florida had some explosive plays in the run game. It's like, well, they don't really have explosive plays in the passing game. It's not something they've done all season. Sure enough, when they come up against West Virginia, that's exactly what they have done in all 3 games. So that tells me that not only are we bad, but we are the gimme game, right? We talked about how tough the Big 12 is. We've talked about it multiple times, right? There's no gimme game here. They're all hard. They're all a challenge. There's no team you can look at on your roster and just say, oh, that's a W. Remember the old Kansas, Iowa State teams? Like that was a W back in the day, under Holgerson. And maybe a little bit with Neil Brown, but not as much. Definitely in the Holgerson era, right? We are now that team. West Virginia has dipped down to that team. That is who we are. We are the gimme game. We are the W. I'd say us and probably Oklahoma State, right? We are the new Iowa State, and we're the new Iowa State and Kansas of old. Now, with that said, that's my interpretation of where we are at this point, where the program is. And, I like to go and I like to talk about, where are we headed? What is this win or loss or the game that we just played? What does it mean for the program moving forward? Things like that. So right now, as we stand, the status of this program, we are the automatic win for the other teams. It's just what it is. That's a hard pill to swallow. I didn't think West Virginia would ever be in that position. I thought, at least for this season, we may not win, but you're going to be black and blue after you play us. You're going to remember that you played West Virginia, and we're going to be a tough out, all that stuff. That's, yeah, that didn't happen, did it? And so that's just who we are right now. Now, with that said, we're going to talk about moving forward. Okay, what did this game mean to the program? What's it mean moving forward? Rodriguez, all that stuff. So despite being the basement dweller of the Big 12, despite being the automatic W, because I'll be honest, I don't know if we find another one in this year. If we do, it's going to be an upset because we will not be favored in any other game. I guarantee you that. I thought maybe Colorado. Colorado actually wins. So, no, we will not be favored in any other game. And we'll get into the schedule later. But moving forward, I still believe that Rich Rodriguez was a good hire. And I believe that if he gets the right guys, we will be successful. Now, there comes the challenge, right? Getting the right guys. Now, from what I have heard from a reliable source, and this is not a personal conversation, I've heard this from Tony Caridi. I would consider him a very reliable source on Mountaineer football. At least, for Mountaineer football. I was going to say other sports too, men's basketball, things like that. But certainly Mountaineer football, right? I would consider him somebody that's somewhat in the know, understands what's going on. He's been around the block. He's, he knows Rodriguez, things like that. And he told me, or he didn't tell me, sorry. I heard him say on a podcast multiple times that West Virginia will be in the top 4 or 5 in NIL in the league. Like, that is where we're headed. And if that's the truth, then I think brighter days are ahead. If we are one of the top spenders, the top 5 spenders in this league, we will win. Because that's what it takes nowadays. It's horses. Now, coaching matters. Don't get me wrong. Coaching matters. If you have a dud of a coach, but a coach looks a lot better when he has better athletes to coach. It's plain and simple. I mean, we know Rodriguez is a good coach. He's won 90 some games as a head coach. He's like 4th or 5th winningest coach among active coaches, something like that. He can coach. He's got multiple conference titles, things like that. Coach of the Year awards, everything. He knows how to coach. But when you don't have players that can execute, they just don't have the talent to execute what you're trying to run, it's hard. It's very hard. Now, you can say, oh, we should have spent more money on this. We should have spent more money on that. But as it's been reported that, we kept about $5 million. We held back $5 million from this year to go after or to keep that for next season. And I think that was a brilliant move. And one of the reasons I think so is because I think when we put this roster together, when Rodriguez got settled in, had to find his coaches, had to find players in the portal, because God knows we didn't have a team at all. So we basically had to find an entire team out of the portal. Guess what? When you're bringing in 70-some guys, 80, whatever the number is now, I keep hearing different things. They're not all going to hit. You're lucky to hit on what, 5% of the guys that you bring in. I don't even know a number. But that's why you see some really good programs like these powerhouse programs. They usually bring in 20 or less transfers, right? They're building through the high school ranks and bringing in heavy hitters to fill spots. That's their formula, and I know that's what Rodriguez is going to do. But building this team, when you got to bring in that many guys, even if you hit on the 5% that you need, it's still not enough, right? You need depth for this league. And so moving forward, I think, and I'm not coming up with this myself. I believe I heard someone else say it, and it may very well have been the strategy. I think I heard Ren Baker say it. So when you looked at the portal when Rodriguez got here, right, a lot of these guys, I know tampering is supposed to be illegal, but let's be honest, it happens. So a lot of these guys are probably all but spoken for when the portal opens, right? They've already talked to the people they need to talk to. They know where they're going. They know what the money's going to be. It's not like the portal opens on Monday and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I haven't heard from anybody yet. Let's see what's out there. No, they already know. They've talked to people. They know what they're getting in. So with that said, when Rodriguez gets hired, I mean, the portal's basically picked clean of all the meat. You're picking through the scraps. You know, we're like a buzzer that comes in and picking off the cartilage and the marrow and all that stuff, and skin and whatnot, internal organs. I don't know if I had that on my bingo card today to talk about, but that's kind of the scenario that I see it as. And so the idea was, look, we're not going to waste all of our money on guys who aren't going to make a difference. Like, we have to field a team, but we're not going to use that $5 million and go get guys who are not going to be here, who are not going to contribute, and don't make a huge difference anyway. So let's set aside that $5 million, and we can use that to keep anyone on the current roster that's a potential playmaker, right? Maybe some of our quarterbacks. Maybe keep Jaheim White around, you know. He hasn't had the best luck here at West Virginia. I think he will stay. But I could see if he wanted a fresh start somewhere. I mean, you look at his career here at WVU. I mean, the first year we won 9 games, right? So it's like, okay, I'm on to something here. Well, then we win 6 games. And then Rodriguez comes in, coaching change, and then he gets hurt, and he's out for the season. I could see wanting a change of scenery. I wouldn't hate him for it. But that $5 million is going to keep someone like him around. There are bright spots on this team. And anyway, the whole point of this was, you're not going to waste money on guys that aren't going to contribute. So we know what this season's going to be. I believe Rodriguez knew what this season was. I don't think probably to this degree. I don't think they were going, let me just slow down and talk. I don't think he knew it was going to be this bad, but he knew that this wasn't going to be the best team that he fielded at WVU. Like, there's a future for this program, and this was a rebuilding year. There was going to be struggles. And so let's save some of that money for the second year, establish the culture. Guys that are returning, they know what to expect now. They know the grind that they have to put in. And let's go get some dogs. Let's use that $5 million to get some more dogs, or keep some of the dogs we have on our team, keep them here. And I think that was the plan. I know that was the plan. That's kind of what Ren Baker alluded to. And so moving forward, I still have faith in Rodriguez, and the program is going to get turned around. It's just, again, it's really, really hard when you're in the middle of probably the worst season in West Virginia football history. It's definitely on the precipice of being such. I think one other team finished 2-9 once. I can't remember the year, maybe in the 70s. And of course, 3-8 in 01. But we're looking at 2-10. And I've heard fans over the last couple games. They keep talking about adjustments that need to be made to get this thing on track. You have to get that out of your head. There is no getting back on track with this team. Now, I know as a coach, as the staff and the players, you're going to do what you need to do to try to win games, right? That's what you're paid to do. That's what you're supposed to do. But this idea that we need to throw in this guy, we need to do this, this team is not getting back on track. It never was on track. All right, the season is what the season is. The team is what we are. This is a throwaway year. Now, I know it's not that for the coaches, and I know it's not that for the players, because this is their livelihood, right? It means something. And I don't mean to take away that from them. But as a fan, this is a throwaway season, right? This is one where you're just looking to get your culture built and established. That's it. Like, going into the off season, guys know, okay, now we're going into winter workouts. We know the expectation of what's that supposed to be. Now we're going into spring ball. We know the expectation. Now we're going into summer. We know the expectation, right? That's all this year is to this point. Now, I don't believe it started that way. I think it's from a fan perspective, right? We knew we wouldn't be a great team. We knew there would be lumps, but I don't think we thought it was going to be this bad, right? Where you can't generate anything. And so I think you just gotta, it's a loss. You just chalk this season up to a loss, right? We're not going to get better. And that's, like, I'm not putting any fault. Like, I'm not getting mad and, like, cursing Rodriguez and the staff or the players. Like, we're just not getting better. We're just not. This season is just, cross it off the list. It's not going to be anything. And that's okay moving forward. I think that's the point I'm trying to make is I don't want fans to get caught into this bubble of this season of where, what can we do to turn it around? It's not getting turned around this year. We are what we are. We are a 2-5 team now, and we're probably going to end up 2-10, maybe 3-9, maybe. But there's nothing that I've seen from this team post Pitt that gives me any confidence that we can beat anybody. I think it's one thing if we were competitive in these losses. Like, let's say, we're going toe-to-toe for like 3 quarters, and finally in the fourth quarter, like, the other team's talent just kind of takes over. Like, we've seen that happen hundreds, thousands of times. But we're not even competitive. We're not even putting up any kind of fight. And so I think that's kind of the mindset that Mountaineer fans need to get in at this point. If you're not there, you need to be. That this season is, from a fan perspective, right? Not from a player or coach perspective, but from a fan perspective, this season is essentially over. Now, that doesn't mean you don't go out and still support the team, right? You still attend games if you can. You still watch. I'm going to. I had a chance to attend the game this weekend against TCU, the Coal Rush. Unfortunately, I couldn't go. Family stuff. This coming weekend's like the one free weekend we have in October. So, we're doing family things, going to farms and hay rides and things like that. But I was extended an offer to go to Colorado and Texas Tech. And I said, heck yeah, I'm signing up. This is still my team, my university. And I say that because I went there and I paid enough money to go there. So yeah, this is my team. This is who I root for. And they're still my team. They're still my program. And I'm going to support them. Do I have to like it? No, not at all. I hate it. And in fact, this is the worst I've probably ever felt about a football team. Well, I'll take that back. I won't say that because there are times when I thought we were going to be good, say 2024 WVU, and we just completely crapped to bed. That was a bad feeling. Knowing that you came off a 9-win season, you have a lot of the playmakers back, and you're ready to take the country by storm, and you don't. That's a tough pill to swallow. At least this year, I knew we weren't going to be that good. Now, I predicted 7-5, but seeing how we perform, I'll just say the lack of talent that we have, I certainly haven't had an overinflated expectation. And that's okay. I mean, we thought with Rodriguez, he would kind of hit the ground running to a degree, right? We would have an offense that could generate something, right? We will probably lose some big games. We might win a couple that we're not supposed to, things like that. But when you really break it down and look at it, it's like that completely makes sense of what's happening right now. It's not a surprise. It's not, it's not something that I'm not even sure how to say that. I'll probably erase that part. Like it was definitely an overinflated sense of what was going to happen. I think what I'm trying to say is that, the expectation coming into the season, I certainly was looking at it with my heart and not my head. And I probably should have been looking at it with my head. I think the nostalgia angle, kind of the nostalgia bug got everybody thinking that, again, we were going to hit the ground running. But when you have this many transfers, right, coming in, new coaches, staff, and a significantly harder schedule than you did when Rodriguez coached the first time, it makes complete sense why we are performing the way we are now. Looking back on it, it's like, yeah, we probably should have saw this coming. Maybe not to this degree, right? Just not being able to generate anything. But there's a reason why Vegas set this at 5.5 wins for this team. And it doesn't look like we're going to even come close to that. And so Vegas even gave us a little more credit than how we're actually performing to this point. So I don't want to tell fans to don't lose faith. Hold on. Lose faith for this season. Absolutely. Just let it go. We're not going to turn this thing around. And again, I think people are waiting for this Pat White moment where everything clicks and, we pull off that Louisville. It ain't happening. And you know why? And this is no knock on any player that's on that team. If you're going to have a Pat White moment, you need to have a Pat White on your team. And we just don't. Or we don't have the players that were surrounding Pat White. You got to remember, that was year 5. Is it year 5? Yeah, of Rodriguez's tenure when Pat White broke off, right? Everything around him had been established for 5 years. The lines, O-line, D-line, secondary, running backs, receivers, all that stuff. That stuff was already in place. This is different. This is new to everybody. And you have 2 freshman quarterbacks, battling it out. And I know there's some pushback about, you just need to go with one guy and let him go. I think we need to get into our heads. First, get out of our heads that we need to find ways to win. From a fan perspective. From a coach, yes, you're always going to find ways to win. Put your best 11, your 22, whatever, out there on the field. That is your job. But as a fan, I think we need to stop looking at this as, what do we need to do to turn this around? It's not happening, all right? This season is strictly a trial period. It's a proving ground. Who on this roster is good enough to stay till next year? That's all this is. Now, that probably didn't start out that way, right? I don't think that was the intention of this season, but certainly that is what it is going to be this year from here on out. This is a trial period, and he's putting these quarterbacks, these young guys, through the ringer, in and out, because he wants to see what they can do, right? He's not looking to crown a starter for this year. Now, if it happens in the process, then yes. If suddenly Fox or Wilkins has a breakout, and when I say breakout, I'm talking maybe you generate 14 points, not in garbage time, then certainly if one guy breaks out in front of the other or breaks out ahead of the other, he's going to get more snaps. But looking at this as any more than we're just trying to see who's going to make it to next year. That's all this season is at this point. And I think the sooner that West Virginia fans accept this fate and this fact, I think the better off you'll feel. I've accepted it. I kind of figured that about 40 minutes into the Central Florida game. I tweeted out there again, and I'll put it up here. I said after the first 6 games, we're kind of telling ourselves, okay, this might be a really bad season. And then 40 minutes into the Central Florida game, it's like, oh no, okay, it's official. This is official. It's a really bad season. I thought maybe we would turn a corner, have some improvement on the bye week against a weaker team. Granted, it is on the road, but Central Florida is probably the worst team we'll face all season. Colorado may be a close second. We'll have to see how the season plays out by the time we get there. But this was a game that was attainable, and we looked worse than we did against BYU and Utah. I think simply the fact that Central Florida is not nearly as good as those two teams, and we looked just as bad. And so again, moving forward, I think fans just have to accept the fate that this is a trial season. We're playing to see who's going to be on the roster. And I got to tell you, it doesn't look promising. I think we need to go out and hit both lines hard, O-line and D-line, and a quarterback. Now, does that mean I think Wilkins or Fox isn't the guy? I think they could be, but you're not surrounding them with anything to allow them to be successful. So until you do that, I don't think we can actually see what these two guys can do. And again, it's not a matter of, we're looking to salvage this season. This season is not salvageable, right? When I was 26, I got in a wreck on the interstate, went toe to toe with a 18-wheeler. What had happened is my car slipped on. It was really snowy out. My car slipped on some ice, and I veered into an 18-wheeler on the interstate. You look at pictures of my car. I mean, it's all the passenger side is all crashed in, whatever. And so it was totaled, right? There's nothing you can salvage from this car. You cannot repair it. It's beyond repair. The only thing you can do is strip it down for whatever parts are still available. That is what this season is. It is a total loss. There's nothing you are going to salvage from it. You can pick out certain pieces and maybe use them in the next car that you build for next year. But if this season is a vehicle, it has been totaled, right? And we're just waiting on that insurance check to cover some of the damages so we can use that for next year. So that's my assessment on this game and moving forward. One more thing, this weekend is TCU. So we're getting ready for the Coal Rush. I have to say, it's a shame that we have to use these themed games on something we know that's not going to turn out well. As awesome as the 65 throwbacks were, I hate that we used them in a game where we looked just completely inept. It's like we wasted it. And I feel the same with this Coal Rush, right? We're going to use it because it's a themed game and all that stuff, but it's going to be pointless. It's like you've almost wasted it. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I don't expect a lot for the rest of the season. Will we get another win? Maybe. But and the funny thing is, I keep hoping. This is such a Mountaineer thing, a Mountaineer fan thing. I keep hoping. I'm like, you know what? We're going to be the bottom of college football, but somehow we are going to find a way to upset Texas Tech at the end of the year. It's like I have this gut feeling about it. I'm probably completely wrong, but just something, it's one of those things like we'll somehow find a way. Maybe they just get a bunch of turnovers and are not playing well. Maybe it's a cold, rainy November. I think it's like the 22nd. And they're just not up to the challenge being on the road. Maybe they lost a game before that. Who knows what the case may be, but it seems like something we would do. And hey, maybe that's a good springboard into the next season. We'll have to see. But I'm going to close this out. I've been rambling way too long. My wife has called me 3 times. It's probably a good indicator that I need to wrap this up. But with that being said, lose faith on this season. Please do. But don't lose faith in the program overall moving forward. And I'm not saying lose faith. Don't give up watching or attending. I still want you to do that. It's a good experience. I'm going with my good friend. My best friend. He was the best man at my wedding. I was the best man at his wedding. That kind of thing. I still want to go because it's a good experience. And I love my Mountaineers. But I no longer have faith in this season that something's going to click. It's not going to happen. And the other thing I'll mention real quick is the injury bug. I don't think we look at that enough. I mean, you think about you've lost your starting quarterback, your number one and number two running back. You lost your probably what would have been your number two wide receiver in Jaden Bray. I mean, you're just decimated with injuries as well. So that doesn't help. Now, does that mean we would have won more games? No, but you probably look a little better, right? Maybe you score one more touchdown. But, again, that doesn't help either. So with that said, I'm going to close this out. I appreciate you guys. If you stayed this long, I appreciate you. All the support you give me. Likes and follows and shares and subscriptions and everything. It lets me know that I'm at least doing something right. So again, I appreciate all the support. You guys have a very fine week. We got basketball to look forward to. I think we may have something there. So hold on, and we'll talk about that in the future. So again, coming up Saturday, we got TCU, 6 o'clock in Morgantown, Coal Rush. We'll see how it goes. Just throw caution to the wind. Maybe we pull one out. Who knows? But that said, remember, hype fades, stats speak. Goodbye. God bless. Go Ears.